Now we are recording. Hello, this is Emilio Garcia. Welcome to another session or meetup of the Greenville HubSpot user group. With me is Gabby Garcia, which, as always, she's quite helpful on setting up all of this. All the things that you see happening is because she helps me with presentations and scheduling and making sure that the trains get on time. So thank you, Gabby. And for those of you that are joining for the first time, we hope that you get a lot of value. We are a HubSpot user group that consistently this year has been able to meet every month. So we have a new topic every month. We try to put a little bit of a mix between expert topics versus more fundamental or beginners topics. And we try to cover the ever expanding world of HubSpot from all the hubs. So we try our best there, but as always, we like to go in the direction that people that join the conversation want us to go. So always feel free to reach out and tell us, if there's something that you want to learn or discuss. Let us know. Also, for those of you that are joining for the first time, we like to make it as interactive as possible. If there's any interest from you to talk or share your video or ask a question, feel free to do so. That will be fantastic. If you don't, then at least you can use the chat and you can post some questions. And Gabby usually at the end will draw my attention to any questions that you might have. Let me share my screen now so we can start with the presentation here. So I think I got it. I will share my entire screen. I think that's, or the window, that's always better. So I will just need a little confirmation that you are seeing the infinite loop, I guess. That's right. All right. So, and now, and if you can help me, Gabby, you should be seeing the presentation as well.
Yes.
Awesome. Awesome. Very well. So today's topic, we will talk about the website optimization, how to increase page performance and more. And while we will try it as much as possible to be platform agnostic, because the things that you can do to improve your page performance are not necessarily only done on HubSpot. Obviously, this is a HubSpot user group, and there are things that you can do from the HubSpot CMS that will be easier compared to some scenarios and other platforms, right? So even if your website is not hosted on HubSpot, you can still take advantage of what we're talking about. But if your website is hosted on the CMS, then you will even take more value out of this conversation, as always. So as always, this is again my name, Emilio Garcia. You can find me on LinkedIn. That will be the most easier way to connect if you want to on social media. And I also like to talk about, we are a demand generation agency, and we have a series of live events that Gavi and I host bi-weekly. It's called Demand Gen Studio, where we talked about demand generation issues and things that usually B2B marketers are interested on. So if you want to follow up the conversation and listen to talk about topics not necessarily related to HubSpot, I will be delighted if you join us. So let us connect there. And this is Gabby as well. You will find her on LinkedIn. And again, Gabby helped me quite a lot with all this content. So let us walk really quickly through what we will cover today. Hopefully, we have enough time to cover all, or at least pique your interest, and you can find this on your own. So we will talk about in general about why it's important to improve the performance of your website. You might guess that already, but obviously we'll cover the details of that. A little bit of what you can do from on-page SEO, right? This is not a whole SEO concept, just the part that has to do with the website. Especially things that you can do for mobile, and a little bit of security best practices. Again, a whole topic out of itself, but today we're going to cover at least the basics. So let us dive right in. Obviously, why is important that you need to improve the speed of your website, or what is the definition? Well, technically is the speed at which the pages that are in your website are downloaded on the computer and showed to the browser. right? And I know this is pretty basic, but basically that's the concept. The pages of your website, of your company's website, live on a server, and every time that someone browses on the internet, they have to download those files from their browser. And depending on their internet connection and the size of the files that you are downloading, not just the code, but the images, the videos, that will affect as fast the website loads. And that matters. And this is a statistic that actually belongs to the website grader, which is a tool that I will discuss from HubSpot. It matters because best in class web pages the benchmark should be that they should load within 5 seconds of a page being called upon, right? And obviously, the impact is that if you have anything slower, what will happen is that usually the visitor will get frustrated and just leave, obviously, losing the opportunity for conversions and for sales. So that's the main reason you want to make your page faster. Yes, it's true that um, paid speed is part of the things that crawlers like Google and other tools will consider for indexing purposes. But as I quickly comment, you're not doing that for the bots. You actually are doing it for your visitors. The reason why crawlers, or in this case, search engines, considering speed an important factor is because humans don't like to wait that much, right? So the main reason is you want to improve the experience of your users. And while obviously you want to have a great design and a great UI, if you are compromising design and looks for speed, usually that will not be a good trade-off, because people rather just get quickly through your website and accomplish the things that they want to do than look at the latest design and creative things that longer, especially on mobile, right? So that's the other thing that I obviously want to highlight is that 5 seconds goes across all platforms, and usually is very easy or easier to accomplish on desktop because you have broader internet speed, more stable connections, and usually a faster processor and memory. So you can have a heavier website and still be okay. But mobile is a completely different thing because you have varying, broadband speed, and usually not as capable of a processor and memory. So that's where it matters the most. And what had happened over the years is that more and more traffic is coming from mobile rather than desktop, right? I think that for some websites, more than 50% of their traffic comes from mobile. So that's part of the reason why the push for mobile first, for tools that allowed you to measure speed, because most of the interactions nowadays really happen on mobile for, especially when time is of the essence. Now, another important statistic, especially if you have a website that is trying to accomplish purchases on it, is that 79% of shoppers that are dissatisfied with the performance of the site in terms of speed are less likely to purchase from the same site again. And I think all of us have experienced that, right? Especially around payment. If you have a lot of connections to make the payment happen, then people get frustrated and they just jump to something that they feel more familiar. So that's part of the reason why this is obviously quite important. Now, usually there are some metrics or things that affect your website performance that you want to take advantage of. And the first will be that you need to make your website accessible, right, to all people, especially on mobile, because the design constrains the size of things. So that's one part that you need to pay attention to. The next thing will be the usability, right? There's a compromise between having something that looks different than everything else versus having something that feels familiar enough that people can engage with it without a lot of training, right? And again, I'm saying that is a trade-off because obviously there are websites that are pushing the envelope on putting new designs and configuring the interface in a way that feels fresh, but at the same time, especially for people that is not using website on mobile that frequently, if you put out there a design that is very hard to comprehend and that will need a little bit of exploring, you can also create frustration. It's a different kind of slowness because the website will be there already. It might be fast, but it's so hard to use that people still spend a lot of time trying to figure it out, and they will leave, right? And obviously, how do you design the website itself, the structure, how do you put the content is also helpful because it's part of that idea of making sure that the design feels as familiar as possible, right? If you don't care or you don't pay attention to these metrics, then it will cascade on the impact of performance because you will impact initially traffic, and with less traffic you will have less conversions, right? Or even for that same traffic, lower conversion rates. And obviously with those conversions rate going down, you will impact revenue at some point, right? Especially if your company is depending more and more on your website as a source of revenue. And that's a big caveat here, right? There are companies that can get away with crappy or bad websites just because they are not a big source of revenue. But the more and more your website becomes a source of it, right, like a sales channel, the more and more it matters that it's speedy and they have a familiar design and that is capable of delivering a similar experience to different visitors, even those with disabilities or problems to access or navigate. So those are things that obviously will be important to keep in mind. And again, probably one of the biggest one is that your website is fast, right? So you want to increase the speed and reduce the page side. And I'm gonna put an example later on the website grader and how it works. So speed is in this case one of the key ones that you want to pay attention to. And here are some of the things that you want to explore or at least understand. I want to warn everybody here, especially those of you that are marketers that don't work with the website on the technical side that often, that a lot of the things that you can do to improve speed, unfortunately, require technical knowledge, right? It will be on the preview of your website developer or website master, and that's what makes it harder to do. And that's where I think the CMS on HubSpot brings some benefits because they are aligned with some of those parameters from tools like Google Page Speed. And usually, right, either you have a developer that knows the rules or you can buy or get access to some of the themes that are little by little, continue to aggregate the best practices in the interface so you can comply to this as much as possible, right? So these are some of the metrics or characteristics that you have to pay attention for load speed. The time, the first one is the first console pane is the time it takes in seconds for text and images to show, right? And in essence is, if you're using weird fonts, they have to be loaded from an external location versus something common like Google Fonts. Or if you're using large files or a bunch of them and you are blocking the website to present itself until you have loaded all of them, then it will take a long time to show the website for the first time. And that's one key element. And the other one is that after you have loaded all those assets, if you also have scripts or things that have to load after those images, and in the meantime, the user cannot interact with the website, then your time to interactivity, right? The moment that you can actually start clicking or moving the website will also get impacted. And finally, part of the reason why you will have to wait is because you are uploading not just text and images and videos, which is what the user see, but you also uploading the code that gives the website structure and design and interaction or animation. And those files usually can, get quite large. And there are some things that you can do to improve the speed by making them smaller. And we will cover a little bit of that, and which again is kind of technical, but at least will give you an idea of what to ask. So again, very basic. Some of you might be very familiar with this, but if you if you have worked with website design before, you will have clear in your mind that you have basically three big components on the code of a website, right? The HTML, the CSS, and JavaScript. And in my mind, it is like a house, right, where the HTML is the framework, right? The spaces, the rooms. If you're building it with wood, will be the structure that defines the spaces. CSS for me is what you cover all with, right? The colors, the walls, the details, the features of the house that make it look nice, right? Not bare born, just blank walls. And finally, JavaScript will be all the things that give it interaction, right? Your lights and smart features and things like that. So that's in an essence what's for me on the website. Obviously, there's this coding behind here and rules and all that. I'm oversimplifying it, but that's kind of like the concept that we can use for websites. And because you have these three elements, which are usually code or text, you can make them smaller by some not tricks, but ways of improving the performance. And the first one is called minification, which pretty much means that you reduce all the characters that are not necessary for the code to work, right? And I think I will show it up later, but the idea is when you are creating these files, you need spaces and a nice layout because humans are reading it, right? The coders. But once you have finished on them, when you load it on the page, there's no need for all that space. So you can make it smaller just by removing unnecessary characters like comments and spaces and make the file smaller, right? And that minification can happen at the HTML level, the CSS, and the JavaScript, right? You can also compress, right? And again, I'm not going to dive into the details here, but if, for example, you have a variable on JavaScript and that variable is repeated many times over many places, you can kind of like create a token for it, right? Let's say that you have a variable for color, and it's the same all places, and you can just put a small token, a smaller string, and say, well, every time that you see this token, this is the word that goes here, and you transfer that, and then you are able to compress the information, right? The same happens to images. You can compress them to some degree, depending on where it's gonna be shown, right? If you have a mobile device, the big quality and a lot of pixels for that images is not necessary because the human eye will not distinguish it because it's a very small screen. If you have a big screen on your desktop, then it does matter because now you will be able to see the pixels on the image easier. So depending on that, you want to compress the image to mimic or match the screen size, right? So this is a quick example of how it works, right? This is it works the same for HTML. It works the same for JavaScript. You have this code that describe how the pages are gonna look like, right? So CSS usually control all things related to font size and how do you present the images and all that. And you can see there's a lot of space, right? Nicely spaced, so someone reading this code can't understand it, a programmer or even a marketer, if they want to make a small changes. But you can just put it all together and remove all the space, right? Obviously, it will not be easily available to work out from there, but there's no need because it's being loaded on the website. So you can send this to your computer from the server, and it will take less time, right? Um, and if you can see that even there you have some strings that are repeated time and time again, like button many times, so you can replace those with the strings, and now is now unreadable, but it still works, and that will be the compressed file. So that's the principle, right? You minify and then you compress and you have a way smaller file. Hopefully you can see that happen, right? On the right of screen we have this long file that right now we are not even in the at the end of it. We are almost in the middle of it. And then we have the compressed one, which doesn't even use half of the whole space that is here. So big difference there, right? And so you can obviously, the part of, well, and how do I do that, Emilio? How do I minify and how do you compress? Well, that depends on the CMS that you're using, right? So I'm sure there are solutions for WordPress, either through plugins or the theme that you're using. And if you are using Drupal or Webflow or any other of Squarespace, any other of the CMSs, probably all of them will have a solution. HubSpot obviously have one as well, right? So depending on the theme that you're using, usually those will have the tools to allow for minification and compression. If I remember quite well, you will have to wait a little bit if you make a change, right? Because if you make a change on the file or add, changes to the CMS file or the JavaScript, then the change will have to be replicated on the clients, and I think it takes a while. But if you haven't changed your website in a long time, then it will get minified, it will get compressed, and you will have a smaller size. Some additional recommendations that I think I have covered or talked about already is try to use as much standard fonts as possible, right? Popular fonts, and there are hundreds of them, if not thousands. So you have a lot of selection. You will not be constrained. If you use custom fonts, then probably they will have to be provided directly from your server rather than from CDNs, from Google or other providers, and that will make your website slower. The other big contender is hosting video, right? So as much as possible as you can host on video solutions that already have figured out how to deliver video faster, which obviously is the heaviest of all the elements between text, images, and video, the better. Use solutions to compress your images, right? And again, here in the past, you have to compress your files, upload it to the server or the CMS, and then the CMS will deliver that. Nowadays, HubSpot and I'm sure other places actually do that dynamically, right? You upload the file, the largest one that you will need for your desktop, and you set up the configuration in a way that it will compress the file depending on what is required, right? Dynamically for mobile and for desktop. And obviously, that's one of the biggest advantages of tools like this, like the CMS, that you will not have to worry about it. The CMS will do it for you. And finally, you want to make your images responsive, right? That they adapt to the size of the screen or the viewport, which applies to the website design itself, right? And here I'm putting an example of how that works, right? Is the width is 100%, meaning that it will extend to the size of the viewport. So it adjusts to when you make a smaller or larger the screen. But again, you don't have to go in and type that directly. There are settings on the CMS that will allow you to do that, right? Now, I want to bring you awareness of a couple of tools that you can use to evaluate your website directly. So the first one is the website HubSpot website grader. For those of you that have heard of it before, and I will use HubSpot itself. Let's see how it is. It's a very interesting tool from HubSpot. You put a website, put your email, and it will start scanning the website and give you a grade, so you can see the opportunities of it. And obviously, the also very popular one will be the page speed from Google. And I think it's this one. Yes. So let's do the same thing. And it's analyzing there. So this is the website. And it's, to be honest, it's very typical that these two are not the best, but it looks like the rest, they have a very good score. So you see here, like this report is divided into the topics that we were going to cover, right? What about performance? What about the on-page SEO? What about the experience for mobile and the security? And you have a number of parameters that the tool will check, and you get a score based on the number of those parameters that you cover successfully, right? So for example, for performance, there are 30 points divided into these categories here, and you can see that browser caching, minimal page redirects, image size, all of that is great. The size of the page itself is good. It's only that it has a lot of page requests, and therefore the speed, um, oh, that's weird. I don't know why it says that the page speed has an opportunity if it's 16 seconds. Oh, 16 seconds. Yes, yeah, I thought it was 1.5. So there's an opportunity there. Maybe there's something that's preventing them from loading. But you can see the rest. You're right. There's Minify Java, Minify CSS. For SEO, the only opportunity here is that they're missing some descriptive links. So you can see it is a combination of working for the bots, but also helping humans understand the content. And finally, well, in third place is mobile, right? What is the experience of mobile, especially the clicking and tapping, right? And that is easy to read. And the security side is mostly focused on if the website is secure from HTTPS, and if your JavaScript libraries are secure as well, right? So you will see here some recommendations. And I think something that is pretty awesome is that, yeah, you get the recommendations, but then you click here on the 15-minute lesson, and it will send you to a section on the Academy where you will cover all these topics, at least to understand what to ask to the web developer, right? And the same happened to page speed. I think we have it here. And so very similar, right? We have performance, accessibility, best practices, and SEO. And you will have, the only difference here is that you will have a score for mobile and you will have a score for desktop, right? Which usually what happens is that desktop usually tends to have better scores, uh, especially on performance. You can see here they got an 85 on desktop. Accessibility similar, best practices similar, but performance is the biggest opportunity. And this one is more technical because you can see here that you have a detailed description of JavaScript to reduce size, resources, blocking loading performance, image elements. So this is quite technical, but also helpful if you want to start working on some of these. Usually there's a priority, right? So you have here the red ones will be the ones that you want to take care of first, and then you have your orange ones. Um, so that's that. I also did one for HubSpot, for our website as well, and we seem to have way more opportunities than HubSpot. We have request and page speed as well. The rest as well. We're okay in SEO. We have an opportunity on mobile. I think we need to work on some of those tabs, some elements that probably are not there. And it looks like some of our libraries might not be secure. And we use external libraries. So maybe one of those we need to review and patch. So there's an opportunity there. So you can take a look at this, right? Website grader and page speed, and that will give you a point to start with, right? And obviously, probably the one that will matter the most at the beginning for you will be performance, and usually will be around mobile. That's the one that is the hardest to solve. All right, going back to the presentation on the SEO part, right? Again, the things that you're doing here will be on page, not the things that you outside. But the idea is that you optimize the resources that you have on the front end, meaning the things that you show to the visitor, and in the back end, right? The things that the crawler can see that users can't, to improve the chances that the crawler do their jobs the best, right? And the functions of those crawlers are basically three. They initially crawl the website, right? That's the one thing that they do initially, and try to understand the structure of the website and the content. And based on that, they organize and store that information in their own databases, in this case, Google or Microsoft. And finally, using that, they rank the content, and depending on what people search, they will show up the ones that they consider the best. So we want to improve the chances first that our website is crawled. Second, that is understood and organized in a proper way, or at least the same way that we understand it. And finally, that we are relevant enough that our content ranks at the best places for the searches that matter to us. So the structure of the website influence those three aspects, and that's why we want to work on those. There are many things that you can do here, but one quick one is obviously that you have a sitemap, right? That sitemap tells the crawler what is the structure of your website and how it's organized. These crawlers can figure out part of the website on themselves because they just keep looking for links and go deeper and deeper. But there's a limit to what they can do that. So it is better if you provide that information beforehand, so at least the crawler has a reference and can find pages that maybe will not be available just going into the website itself, right? Page by page. So it's called a sitemap. It's a XML file, and it will have information about the pages, when they will last modified, and similar things. It's obviously a file that, depending on your CMS, can be created automatically. Nowadays, I think most CMS will have that. I doubt that there's one that you have to do it manually, but at least check how it works, right? And so that will be something important to understand. And you want to involve, marketing, development, IT, and legal on the structure of your website and decide what pages belong to the sitemap and which ones don't, right? In the case of the CMS, and let me just make sure that, yeah, this is the last one. In the case of the CMS, I want to highlight where do you go and do that. Let me just very quickly go here. And it's on the website, marketing. There you go. So you, on your portal, you navigate to the settings on the sprocket, and then you go to domains and URL, and then within that you go to the tab called sitemap. And for the domain or subdomain that you're hosting your content, then here you will have a view of the pages that belong to the sitemap. Usually HubSpot adds any website page and blog post automatically to the sitemap, right? They're included automatically. Landing pages usually do not get added to the sitemap because they are not usually intended to be crawled and rank for search engines. So if that's your default mode, there's nothing that you need to do for landing pages. But if you have a landing page that you want to make sure it gets crawled, or at least added to the sitemap, you will have to add it manually here, right? And you will be able to pick that page. So you can see, for example, we have this Let's Talk page, which is a landing page, and it is not part of the sitemap, but in theory we can add it, right? So this will give you an idea, and then once you have done that, you can view that file here, right? For example, this is ours, and you can see it's a very simple file. Just shows every page, the last time that it was modified, and some extra information for the crawler to understand the site, right? So quite helpful for you to see. Now, jumping into the mobile part, right? Again, as we were saying, more and more activities done on mobile devices. I was kind of in on ballpark on this, on the percentage of traffic that goes there, 50%. And I think for some industries and some companies is even higher. I have seen 60, 70% some cases. So it's really important that you have a responsive design, right? Meaning a website that adapts to the viewpoint or the viewport of each of the devices that people is using. More and more, we have different screen sizes and all that. So make sure that your solution have a design that is responsive. And again, another thing that you don't have to worry that much about on HubSpot CMS is that all the designs that are in the marketplace, right? All of them are responsive already. So if you go to the on your portal and you go to the asset marketplace, then you will find all these themes, right, that you can use to build your website. And both free and pay ones will be responsive by default, because the marketplace have these rules for developers to upload a themes, and if they don't follow them, they don't get accepted. So that's where you get that protection, right? And the more best practices that get uploaded based on the website grader, the more strict that the requirements become, and you get advantage of that in the form of updates from the theme, right? They usually keep updating the ones that, especially the pay ones, uh, will get updated quite frequently. You can see this one, for example, that will have the revision history, and they will keep making changes and trying to be compliant and improve the performance without you doing necessarily anything on it. So make sure that your theme is responsive if you're not hosting it on HubSpot. And finally, the security part, probably the most important one is that you have your SSL, right? Your the one that authenticates that your website is, or the domain is truly the right site, and not one that is phishing or trying to be an imposter. And as all of us experiment, that is with the change on the protocol from HTTP to HTTPS, what makes it secure. And with the way that you keep it that way is you have these certificates that all of us know about. And that for your website, sometimes that is done at the domain level, right? You pay security, or a secure channel for your domain on the domain host. But in the case of HubSpot, if you host your website on HubSpot, uh, automatically comes with that security layer on top of it, right? So that's another convenient thing to do, um, that you will have here. There are obviously solutions that you can have on, for example, popular CMS like WordPress, but you will have to do a little more work to accomplish just that. So pay attention to that. Obviously, as you saw, it's not just important to have the protocol secure. It's also important to have the libraries that execute animation and therefore are programming also secure. And it looks like, for example, in our case, we have some of them that probably are using HTTP instead of HTTPS, or that the code itself is rendering resources that are not secure. So you want to check out all those layers as well, right? Um, and that's it. I think I have covered all. As always, right? We will share this presentation with you guys after this event in the email for those of you that attended, where you will find additional resources, right? I cover some of them, but as I was saying, if you go to the website grader, usually for each of the elements, you will have a lesson that will explain in more detail the things that you can do to improve performance. And those lessons as well will have resources like, let me go to this one and show you, right? If, for example, you get into the speed one and click on resources, you will find here guides and checklists, right? That's actually one of the documents that I found here, right? So you have a checklist here of what things you need to review. So paid a visit to it. And again, you have the website grader, which is, I think, is a great tool. And obviously, if you have some other questions or inquiries, you can always check the academy for additional resources. All right. So let me stop sharing here and ask, is there any questions that anyone might have? All right. Either I explained it very well or very bad. So I hope you, as always, have found value on it. I appreciate it. We will have our next event for July, which will be what, Gabi?
6th on July, and it's going to be content strategy with HubSpot.
Nice, very nice. Always content strategy. We want to cover what type of content should you create for your company, and obviously to draw attention and earn the attention of potential buyers, and how do you go about and implement it on HubSpot. So it's going to be a nice topic for those of you who are either struggling or trying to revamp your content strategy. I highly recommend that you attend. And yeah, just to say thank you. And Gavi, thank you as well for helping us with this. I hope everyone had a great day, and see you at the next one. Bye bye.
See you, everyone.